Humans have been inventing things for thousands of years, from the wheel to the toilet, and most of these inventions we still use today. But there are some ancient creations that we've long since forgotten, either because they were lost in time or lost due to natural disasters. Here are some crazy inventions you won't learn anywhere else. Starting off this countdown, we have the Antikythera mechanism. This is an ancient Greek device that was invented around 200 BC by Archimedes. It's considered to be one of the most complex machines ever created during the ancient world. The device was found in a shipwreck in 1901 near the Greek island of Antikythera. That's how it got its name. Only one piece of the device remains today, and it's kept in a museum in Athens. The Antikythera mechanism was used to calculate astronomical positions and eclipses. It had dials and gears that could be adjusted to show the positions of the moon and planets. It's believed that only a few of these devices were ever made. There's a lot about this invention that scientists don't know. Because so much of it is missing, we can only imagine what the fully intact version looked like. We also don't know how the device was powered. Some believe it was wound up, while others think it may have been powered by water. Either way, it's amazing to think that something this advanced was created more than 2,000 years ago. In our last spot, we have the Baghdad battery. You might be surprised to hear that electricity wasn't invented in the 19th century with Thomas Edison, but over 2,000 years before. In 1936, a group of archaeologists in Iraq discovered a collection of clay jars buried near the ancient city of Baghdad. The jars contained a copper tube, an iron nail, and a wax seal. When put together, these objects formed a battery. Each jar could generate about 1 and 2 volts of electricity, not nearly enough to power anything on its own. But if linked together, the batteries could have powered street lamps and other devices. Researchers are still working to figure out exactly how the batteries worked and how they were used. Some say they were used for electroplating, others believe they were used to generate electricity. Either way, these batteries are proof that humans have been harnessing the power of electricity for thousands of years. In the 9th century, a Muslim scholar named Al-Jazari invented a robot servant. He was inspired by the mechanical automata of ancient Greece. His invention was a programmable machine that could perform simple tasks such as pouring water, serving food, and cleaning tables. It was controlled by a series of levers and pulleys. The robot servant was featured in a book that Al-Jazari wrote about his inventions. The book was called Kitab Kitab al-Mutasar, and it was one of the first books ever written about engineering and technology. Unfortunately, no copies of the book survive today, and we have no idea what the robot servant looked like. But we do know that it impressed the heck out of people at the time. One historian wrote that it was an ingenious and marvelous work of mechanism. Another said it was the most ingenious mechanical device ever conceived. We can only imagine what other inventions Al-Jazari came up with that we've never heard of. Now, we move on to the self-propelled cart. You probably learned about how Leonardo da Vinci designed tanks during the Renaissance. He was actually the first person to ever design a tank. It was called the armored car, and it was designed in 1485. But the design didn't include a motor or engine of any kind. It was meant to be propelled by hand. Then, in 1733, a man named Franz von Holzhausen invented the first self-propelled cart. It was a wooden cart, with wheels connected to a metal frame. A crank was attached to the frame, and when turned, it would move the wheels forward. This allowed the cart to travel without being pushed or pulled by anyone. It was a huge improvement over Leonardo's design, and it paved the way for future inventors to create the first motorized carts. But like many inventions of the time, the plans were lost. Only a single drawing exists of von Holzhausen's invention, and it's held in a museum in Vienna. Next up, we have the flying chair. If you're a fan of the Jetsons, then you probably remember the flying chair. Well, it turns out that this futuristic piece of furniture was actually invented over 2,000 years before the cartoon debuted. It was invented by a Greek inventor named Aresis Philonides, and it was called the polyager. It was a type of stool that had wings attached to it. A crank was attached to the wings, and when turned, it would allow the chair to fly through the air. Of course, it didn't actually fly like a plane. It just glided a few feet off the ground. It was probably more of a lawn chair than an airplane. Still, it was impressive for the time. and it showed that people have been dreaming of flying chairs for centuries. Like many of the items on this list, the plans for the flying chair were lost after the inventor died. But we do have a marble sculpture of the invention that gives us an idea of what it looked like. Next up, we have the horse clock. This is an invention that we can thank Da Vinci for. He was inspired by a horse-drawn carriage and wanted to create a clock that would move like a horse. So he designed the horologe, a clock that looked like a horse and moved like one. 2. It had wheels that were connected to a crankshaft, and as the clock ticked, the crankshaft would turn and the wheels would move. Speed. The clock was controlled by weights, and as the clock ran down, the weights would lower, causing the horse to slow down and eventually stop. Only one of these clocks is known to exist today. It's kept in a museum in Prague, but there were probably several versions made over the years. Sadly, none of them have survived. And now we move on to the typewriter. You probably remember using typewriters in school. They were the clunky machines that we used to write essays and stories. But did you know that the typewriter was invented hundreds of years before computers? It was invented by a man named Christopher Latham Scholes in 1867. He was a journalist who was tired of having to write by hand. He wanted to create a machine that could print letters onto paper quickly and easily, so he invented the typewriter. It took him 6 years to perfect the invention, and in 1873, he patented the typewriter. The first typewriter was a huge success. It made writing essays and stories much easier and faster. It also helped to popularize the use of keyboards. The original typewriter is on display at a museum in Madison, Wisconsin. We have the real gun. Most people know that guns were invented in China, but few have heard of the real gun. It was an early type of firearm that was invented in 1040 AD. It was a bamboo tube that was filled with gunpowder and shot. It was a simple device, but it was very effective. It was used by armies throughout China and soon spread to other parts of the world. Real guns were used in battles for centuries until they were eventually outlawed. Today, it's illegal to own a real gun in most countries. Next up, we have the medieval robot. This is another invention that we can thank Da Vinci for. He was fascinated by the human body and how it worked. And he wanted to create a robot that would move like a human. So he designed the automatons, a mechanical device that looked like a knight in armor. It could walk and move its arms and legs, but it couldn't talk or interact with people. The automaton was a marvel of engineering for the time, but it was also a bit creepy. Imagine seeing a robot knight walking around in the 15th century. You probably wouldn't believe your eyes. Moving along, we have the astrolabe. This is a device that was used to measure the positions of stars and planets. It was invented by Greek astronomers in the 2nd century BC and was used throughout the Middle East, Europe, and Asia. The astrolabe was used by sailors to navigate the seas and by astronomers to study the night sky. It was an incredibly accurate device and was used for centuries until it was eventually replaced by more modern instruments. Next up, we have the analog computer. This is a type of computer that uses gears, pulleys, and other mechanical devices to perform calculations. It was invented in the 19th century and was used to solve complex mathematical problems that would have taken a human mathematician hours or even days to solve. The analog computer was a huge step forward in the development of computers. It paved the way for the electronic computers that we use today. And finally, we have the helicopter. Most people think that the helicopter was invented in the 20th century, but did you know that it was actually invented more than 1,000 years before? It was invented by a Persian engineer named Abbas ibn Firnas in 877 AD. He was inspired by the flight of birds and wanted to create a machine that could do the same. He designed the helicopter, which had 2 sets of wings that rotated, allowing it to take off and land vertically. Unfortunately, the helicopter was never built and the plans were lost. But a model of Abbas ibn Firnas's helicopter is on display at a museum in Tehran, Iran. That's all for this video. Do you know of any other crazy inventions that we should have included? Let us know in the comments below. And make sure to subscribe for more awesome videos. See you next time.